Hey, everybody. Happy Thursday. It is October 1st, 2020. We're only going to get one of them. And boy, is this one going to be a great one. We are talking all about mule and donkey saddles, specifically the Steve Edwards signature saddle. We're going to be talking about that today because there's a lot that goes into this saddle that you need to know about in order to get the perfect fit for your mule or donkey. And we're very excited that you're choosing to spend a little bit of time with us. Now, if you were hanging out with us on a Wednesday around 3 o'clock California time, you would hear us say there's three things we want you to do. Well, really, right now, there's one thing. It's that first thing we want you to do, and we want to know who's here tonight, where you're watching from, and what the weather is like. So there's folks who are already going to be putting that in the comment section. We would love to hear it. While you're doing that, I'll introduce myself. My name is Dave. This is Steve Edwards, and we love talking about mules and donkeys. Steve, how are things going on the ranch this evening?
Doing just great. By golly, we've had a pretty good day. I was at church this morning teaching the men's breakfast, and we had a good time there. And then I've been back here at the ranch doing a lot of odds and end jobs and getting kind of caught up on some office work. And then kind of preparing, getting things ready for this here little webinar, as you call it.
Yeah.
I thought I was going to be just seeing the butt of a cow all my life. I didn't think I was going to be talking about saddles and tack and talking to a guy that got his hair used to stick up in the air, but not no more. It's even better now. He's doing grow up. Okay. So anyway, let's go. Yeah, we're going to have fun.
We'll go. God had big things for you. God had big things for all of us. And we are just realizing our role in the kingdom. Steve, we got a lot of folks already hanging out with us. Let's say hello to some of the folks who are choosing to spend some of their Thursday evening with us. Yeah. Yolanda is here. It's early for you, late for me. That's right. Thank you, Yolanda. You have taken us international right off the bat. It's past midnight. It's already Friday there. Thank you, Yolanda. Linda the mule servant and Theo the sweet one-eyed mule, who is ready to have all his tack fitted this weekend. Cool and dark in rural central Ohio. We got Chris from Ontario, Canada, 45 degrees. Chris from Hugh from Ontario, Canada. Chris from Southern Mississippi. Dwayne is here. Vicky is here. Mike is here. Paul from Kentucky. We've got Hal from Eustis, Florida. We've got Joe and Sherry from Payson. It's hot, they say. Michelle is here from Quebec. We've got Naomi from Washington. Sean from Pinion Hills, California. Butch is here. Jackie is here. Jack is here. Roger is here. Sydney is here. The whole gang is here. And they're all here to listen to everything that you need to know about the Steve Edwards signature saddle. So, folks, I want to tell you just a little bit about what you can expect this evening. Let me go ahead and bring my screen back up here because those are my prompts. That lets me know what we're supposed to be doing. So I do want to welcome you. I'm glad that you're here. What you can expect tonight is a quick introduction. So that's what we're doing right now. A deep dive on Steve Edwards' signature saddles. We are talking about his saddles. We are talking about the origins. We are talking about what makes them unique. And we are going to be ready to answer your questions. We are going to encourage you all throughout this event. And at the end, we are going to encourage you to make a decision to ride a Steve Edwards signature saddle. Just want to be upfront about that. No bait and switch here. We want you to know everything that you need to know so that you can make that decision to ride a Steve Edwards signature saddle. And then at the end, we're going to answer any questions. So if you do have questions and we don't answer them as you ask them, just know that I'm marking them and we will answer them at the end. So I'm marking them as questions. We'll get to them at the end. So if this is your first time ever hanging out with me and Steve, this is your first time ever really hearing much about Steve Edwards, a friend sent you our way, or you saw one of our posts on Facebook or whatnot, just a little bit about Steve Edwards is cowboy in all his life. Ain't that right, Steve?
Yeah, boy. Yeah.
Cowboy in all his life. Been working with mules and by extension, the donkey since 1981. That first mule was Casper. If you go find the podcast, if you do a search for Mule Ranch podcast, The first episode of that podcast, Steve talks all about his experience with Casper. After about 10 years of working with the mule and the donkey, Steve realized that there were a lot of things that nobody taught him and that nobody else was teaching other mule and donkey folks. So he started teaching others what he had learned in that first decade and started doing that in 1991. His resume includes broken bones, punctured ribs, and hip replacements. So you know that this stuff is that the failures are there to lead us to the successes and the truths. And really, ultimately, if you listen to Steve over a period of time, what you're going to hear is Steve has and I can tell you this as one of his friends and a surrogate son. Steve has a passion to educate equine folks about the uniqueness of the mule and the donkey. And you'll hear him say over and over again, I want to share everything that I know as long as I have here on this earth. And when God calls me home, that's fine. YouTube will still be here and folks can still learn and listen everything that I have learned from the mule. And that's really who has taught Steve Edwards is the mule and the donkey. Ain't that right, Steve?
That's right.
Absolutely. So really quickly, it's important to us that you know we're not just making the stuff up that we're about to share with you. We want you to hear from 4 people who can confirm what it is we're about to tell you, what it is we're about to share with you. That's very important to us, and it should be important to you. Don't just take Steve's word for it. Ask questions. Learn. If you don't understand something, figure out what questions you need to ask. Get in touch with us. And here are 4 people who have done just that. This one is Wayne. Wayne says, I love my mule rider's martingale. I noticed a 100% turnaround. I'm 3 weeks, no more. I'm 3 weeks in, no more throwing the head up when it's time to stop. That was some advice that Steve had gave him, said, get the mule rider's martingale, go about your training this way. And Wayne noticed a turnaround. Beth right here says, I have your trail light saddle and pad. I could not be happier with it. So that's someone who's actually using Steve's product there and just loves it. Right here, this is Sherry. Hi, y'all, from hot Florida. Please make fall come early. Well, it's here now, Sherry. I'm still using my trail light saddle. It's an older one, but still in great shape. We build products that are made to last. American-made products, and they are built to last. Sherry's telling you that right there. And then this is from James. We're actually going to be spending some time with James this week, and James says, great saddle. Nice and light and comfortable for our riding donkey. I noticed she steps out easier, walks lighter, and goes the distance. And that is a lot of good to say by a donkey, because believe me, if she is uncomfortable, she will not go. Or she puts up an attitude and tries fast step at home. Thank you, Steve. Now I got my mule. My other boy has started to ride and have to save money for another, either this or a trail rider. Another rider in the family means this poor daddy has to work overtime. So those are 4 people right there. And if you go to muleranch.com, you're going to find review after review after review of people confirming what it is we're going to share with you tonight. So that's my introduction. Like I said, it's important that you know that this is not just us making things up. This is tried and true, and it's worked for mules all over the world. Steve, how many continents have you been on so far training?
Oh, my. Well, I've been in Brazil. I've been in Israel. I've been in Egypt. I've been in Australia. And, of course, I've been in Canada a lot, too.
There you go. Yeah. So this has worked for mules and donkeys and owners across the globe, and it can work for you too. And that's why you're here, and that's why we're glad that you're here. So we're going to get started. I want to start with the question, and I'm going to be taking notes for you guys as Steve talks. And sometimes I'll take the screen down, sometimes I'll put it back up, and I'm going to turn my camera off so it can just be you and Steve. Steve, let's start off. I want to know, why did you create a saddle?
Hey, I happened to notice that Dave and Di from Australia are on there too.
How about that?
Yeah, and now Dave and Di have Belgian mules, 17 hands high, all the way down to a 14-hand mule that Di rides. And I think he's got 4 or 5 of my saddles, but David would probably tell you, and that's in Australia. I also noticed that Yolanda is here, and she's from the Netherlands. She rides get this, folks, a Spanish mule.
Hot dog.
Yeah, a Spanish mule, you know. So that's quite a variety plus what's here. So,
Yeah.
so let's go back. Why did I develop the saddle? When I started riding these mules, I seen they felt different underneath me. I could feel a lot of power, but I felt a stride that was really nice to ride. It was quiet, smooth, easy. And I noticed that when I shot them different, they walked different. When I used a certain saddle on them, like with square skirting, they walked different. When I had saddles on them that were rounded skirting, they walked different. When I placed the saddle in different places on the mule's back, they give me a whole better walk, sometimes a worse walk. So I started figuring things out, and I started taking my different saddles and I started putting on these mules and saying, okay, this saddle fits this better. No, wait a minute. No, it fits this over here. But no, wait, this mule over here. But here's the problem. The same saddles that I was using, even though I had 4 or 5 different saddles, they were all semi-quarter horse bars. That's what they were. Now, I changed my rigging plate. I center fired them. I made it a 3/4 rigging plate. I made it 7/8 rigging plate. I tried all these sort of things, but that was only the front cinch, thinking that that's what I had to do. The back cinch was nothing going on. And so I kept thinking, why am I having problems? Why am I seeing all these dry marks? And why am I seeing the white spots on these mules, you know? And this was my riding stock. But my packing stock that I had my pack saddles on, I didn't have these dry spots. I didn't have these white spots. I didn't have those kind of problems. My saddle stayed in place. That was my pack rig. So I started thinking, okay, it's because my boxes were balanced. It's because of my Arizona cinch, you know. I thought maybe that was it. And so I just left alone. Pack mule, riding mule, you know, 2 different things, no big deal. We had the thought that if we see white spots on the mules or horses, that proved that they were working. That proved that they had a job. That's what we thought, you know. And when we rubbed them raw, you know what? It was because we give them a job. That was what we decided to do. And that was what we were told for years, you know, by the old cowboys and this sort of thing. Well, I met a couple other guys, and they were actually from Canada, Lost Burke and Nick West and Abe Hewitt. And I started listening to them and watching them. And then also my other good cowboy buddies like Bill Doherty, you know, and I started what I call the cream of the crop, the better cowboys who cared about their animals. I started seeing how they saddled with intent. They did it and made sure it was just right. They pulled up the blankets, set things just right. They took a few minutes to put that saddle on just right. And I was always amazed at how their animals seemed to last longer, but I just kept on saddling and riding. Rough spots mean I rode them, period. Okay. But here's the problem. When I started riding other people's animals and horses, when I first started, folks, I was riding horses, and I love my horses, and I like them a lot. But when I put marks on them, I would just say to the people, they'd say, well, how come these marks are here? I'd say, well, it proves I rode them. Proves I put miles on them, you know? Okay. Well, back then it was accepted. But it's not acceptable, folks, because here's the deal. It's my fault those marks are there. It's my fault I didn't place the saddle correctly. It's my fault I didn't do the rigging and this sort of thing correctly. So I kept thinking, pack saddle, riding saddle. What's going on here? Well, I started looking at how the bar was made on my pack saddle. And I started thinking, now, wait a minute. We developed that bar. Abe Hewitt come here from Vancouver, British Columbia, come down here and wintered with DeLoss Burke, Nick West. They were all friends. And I started thinking about this. Now, wait a minute. Here we have my bar. This is the mule bar. Notice how the bar comes up in the front.
Yeah.
And notice the design of it there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Notice their design right there. kind of flat and comes up in the front.
Yep.
Very important. Scapula relief right there, folks. But see, that was the saddle bar that we developed for the pack saddle. Now, this is the semi-quarter horse bar. Now, notice the bar. Notice how much more of a curve it has on it. Okay? And notice the front of the bar right here. Okay, right here. Right there. Notice how it's pointed. Notice this point. A lot of you got little white spots on your mules, or have seen them on horses. That's from that part right there on semi-quarter horse. Anytime you go into a saddle shop and you say, I want that saddle name brand, or that saddle name brand, or that saddle name brand, you name one of them name brands, guess what? It's all the same tree. All semi-quarter horse tree. Makes no difference what name, because semi-quarter horse, quarter horse, full quarter horse is our measuring points that we do for majority of our rig. So I went to a saddle maker and I said, hey, what kind of tree are you putting in these saddles you're making for me? He said, semi-quarter horse. And I said, but I don't ride a semi-quarter horse. I ride a mule, you know? And he, well, I'm sorry, Steve, you know, they don't make trees for mules. They make horse trees. That's it. And it fits good enough. Well, I wasn't satisfied with good enough, Dave. I just wasn't getting it. And I started thinking about my pack bars. So I took the pack bars and I went to a tree maker and I said, I want a tree built on these bars. So then they took and they built this tree right here. Built this tree. Notice how the front of the bar comes up right there? Yeah. Yep. We're going to see more of that.
We are.
And yes, we are. And they also gave me a semi-quarter horse tree. Notice this one here is rawhide covered. Notice what happens to rawhide. This tree's about 15 years old, folks. Notice the rawhide starting to come loose. This tree has never been in the desert. I mean, on a saddle, or never been on an animal, and it's just been in and out of my trailer, in and around. And notice how it's coming undone. Rawhide, when it starts getting wet, even though we put slack on it, even though we make it work, it still comes undone. Fiberglass don't. So I developed the tree and the saddle simply because I wanted my animals to be more comfortable. So I kept trying things. I'd say my saddle maker, do this, put the rigging plate here, do the skirting like this. Folks, it's not just the tree. The tree is really important. And this tree is only my tree, period. It is not a mule tree. It is a tree that I developed. All the other trees are somebody else's design. Has nothing to do with my design. This is where it started out with the pack saddle right here with this bar. This is where it started with pack saddle, packing freight up and down the mountains, not just my sandwich. So how did the saddle get developed? Out of necessity. Me and my packers were working. Me and my cowboys were working cattle, packing freight, and this sort of thing. And when you're working, folks, you're putting in a 12, 14-hour day, packing back in the mountains and this sort of thing. You can't go in with a good solid animal and come out with a crippled animal because it takes time. And so there's the basics. Out of necessity, listening to the mule, listening to the donkey, watching them, not just put the saddle on the mule and say, yep, that fits. No, watching it go up the trail, watching it work. That's how I come about with this saddle and this rigging.
There you go. Now, comfort with the mule and the donkey, I don't know that I would say it starts and ends with, but a huge part of comfort comes down to understanding the scapula, what it is, why it matters, how the saddle can impact it, and what makes a mule and donkey different. So when we're talking about out of necessity, a huge part of that necessity comes down to caring for the scapula. Steve, talk to us about the scapula and why you needed to develop a saddle to take into consideration the scapula of the mule and the donkey?
You bet. When we put the saddle on horses, we take the saddle, we put it high up on the wither. Okay. When we do that, we create a gap underneath here. Notice there's a gap on each side of here. And we end up putting pressure back here on the kidneys. Can you see that okay, Dave?
Yeah, we could see it good. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we put the saddle high up on the scapula. And when we do that, here's the downside. Here's the downside. Every time that scapula comes up, every time it comes up,
yeah,
bang, bang, bang. If we move the saddle tree back, the scapula can go up and down still. I got this bar on crooked. We got the scapula that can go up and down, okay, freely. But if we put the saddle up on top of the scapula, and then that's only, let's just say that's 25 pounds. And then we put a 100-pound person on it. That thing is getting beat to death. That scapula is getting beat to death. And so that scapula, it's important that we move the saddle back away. So notice, semi-quarter horse bars right here. When I move this saddle back behind the scapula, notice I can barely get my finger in here. You see that? I can barely get my finger in here. Look how tight it is.
Yep.
Okay.
Now, I'll tell folks, Steve, if we were live doing this right now, like if folks were out at Queen Valley Mule Ranch with Steve right now, he would tell you, come here right now. I want you to slide your fingers right up underneath exactly where that tree ends, where the scapula is. And every single person that does it goes, ow. Grimaces. Yeah. Go ahead, Steve.
Wait, now look at this saddle. Notice I can stick my whole hand in here.
Yep.
Put my whole hand up underneath here.
Can you see that there, folks?
What, pardon me?
Oh, I'm making sure that they can see it.
Okay, so here's the scapula right here. Pretend this is the scapula. Now, behind that scapula, go out and watch your mules and watch your donkeys. Watch that area move. It's moving all the time. Here's the scapula going up and down, up and down. Here's this area right here that's moving. If I take and I tighten my front cinch down, what's that happens to the back saddle? You see that? I tighten my front cinch down, the back of the saddle comes up. Now I've just restricted that area right there. So now as I'm setting and I'm riding, I'm doing this. Where do we see white spots? Right here, folks, right here. So what's it need to be? A saddle tree, you do not want it to fit the whole back. You want it to only fit right here where you sit. Only. You do not want to be having a touch up here, and you do not want to be touching back here. You got to run my whole hand back in here. I developed that because I was soring my mules. Back here is the kidney area. That's the muscle area. If that saddle is setting, against that body right there, that muscle, if that is setting against there, then you're going to be putting pressure upon the muscles of the kidneys, and you can end up with what's called acetaria. Now, we take the semi-quarter horse bars, the tree, and we put it up there. Notice, folks, I can't get my hand in there. I can get a finger in there. All right, now I want you to notice the back of the saddle. It's setting right up against the muscles of the kidneys.
Yep.
Sure, it's fitting. It's sitting all the way across, but it's hitting in two places you don't want it to hit. Where I want it to hit is right where I have the saddle. Now I want you to also look. Can you see this right here? Notice how this is the spine.
Down a little bit, Steve. There you go.
Notice this is the spine. Notice the saddle is setting on top of the spine.
Yep.
Do you see that? So see, folks, that's things you don't see when you look at a saddle. When you look at a saddle, you don't see that tree sitting on there. What I want you to see is, yes, the tree is important. but it's only half of what really goes on. And we'll talk about that in a minute. So you can see semi-quarter horse. Where do you see white spots? Right here. Where is that? Right here on the point of that saddle.
Yep.
Right there. That's where you usually see a little, about the size of a quarter or half a dollar or white spot. Then where do you usually see your bigger white spots? Right here. Right there. Why is that? Because we've over-tightened the front cinch. Over-tightened it. Now, I have folks tell me all the time, well, Steve, I don't tighten that front cinch, but it's hard to get my hand under there. Send me a picture. Guess what I see? I see the hip higher and it going downhill. They got a downhill hip. Now, we've been breeding better, Dave. We've been breeding better mothers, better horses, but we're getting the quarter horse hip and it's too high and it makes the saddle run downhill and pow. So now we take the horse saddle and we raise it up in the back about, say, 2 inches. Look, see how it's going right into the
Yep.
scapula. Now, I'll tell you, folks, this back right here, this saddle right here that we made is an exact replica of one of my mules, my wife's mule, Stacy. So it's the exact one. So now we take my saddle and we lift up the back on it. Look. See how it goes up? Even though I'm lifting up the back of the saddle, because it's curved up, it does not dig in the scapula. It goes over top of the scapula. You see that? Now, if I got that and I'm going down a hill and my saddle does go forward because I didn't adjust my breeching, I'm going to be banging on my mule's scapula, shaking his head. What do you think?
That's great. Makes a lot of sense. Now, I liked what you said, that you don't see everything when you just look at the saddle on the animal. Now, I know when we were putting this together, it's kind of hard to separate. Now, just talk about the saddle bars here. Now, just talk about the tree here. It all fits together. But if we were to take a few minutes just to specifically say, okay, Steve, what do people need to know about the saddle bars? What bullet points would you give folks to say, here are the essential, here's what you need to understand about saddle bars when it comes to the mule and the donkey? We want them to be educated. How would you break it down?
Okay, the bar itself, this bar, notice how it curves out. When you look at it, it curves out to go around the wither of a horse. The downside is where it curves out right here is right where we put our front cinch ring. So it pivots. So what happens is that curve, this point right here, right there, ends up bumping against the mule's scapula. You'll see it on horses as well. You'll see a white spot about this big. That's because they don't tighten the back cinch, or some of them don't even have a back cinch. So you can see how this bar goes, and it goes straight and then it curves. Straight and then it curves. That's the horse bar fitting a horse's wither. Now, horses are A-shaped in their shoulders. Mules are V-shaped in their shoulders. That's why the saddle goes forward. That's why you need a tight back cinch. That's why you need a breeching. Now, when you look at my bar, here's my bar. Notice how it goes straight and then curves up in the front. See that?
Mm-hmm.
So straight and it curves up in the front. Doesn't have a twist that goes around the wither, because when my saddles set back away from the scapula, my bars are only 19.5 inches long. That's all. Your semi-quarter horse bars are 24 inches long. So you put that long of a bar onto a short-backed donkey or mule, and you're going to be banging on his hip and on his scapula. So I found that 19.5-inch bar, that 19.5-inch bar right here, I can take that bar and put it on any mule's back, short coupled or long, And then you got to remember your seat sets right here. So if I want a 15-inch seat, I'm going to be setting my bar here. If I want a 16-inch seat, I move it back an inch. If I want a 17, I move it back another inch. So I'm using the same bar on 3 different seat size, but I can still fit a short-backed mule or a long-backed mule. And 19.5 inches, folks, that comes from my pack saddle. Remember, I told you I learned this stuff from the mule packing freight. And if I had used, when I started using the longer bars, I had back problems. I had kidney problems. I had scapula problems. But when I went to a 19.5-inch bar and I was able to move my seat accordingly and keep my pommel where I liked it, you know, it started working. I started having stronger animals, more consistent animals, animals with not such a sore back.
That's awesome. Stronger animals, more consistent animals, and animals that aren't experiencing soreness in their back. I mean, I think that's really what we're all looking for. And one thing that this is the first, now folks need to know that, Steve, you and I have been friends for well over a decade. Yeah. This is the first time, now I know you've said it other times, but this is the first time I've really keyed in and heard you say that the semi-quarter horse bars are 24 inches long, whereas your bars are 19.5 inches long. This really makes a lot of sense to me because we've always talked about we do not want pressure on the scapula. We do not want pressure on the kidneys. And yeah, if you've got an extra 4.5 inches, really there's no way that you're going to be able to avoid putting pressure on those areas because there's only so many places that the saddle can go up too far and it's hitting the scapula, go back too far and it's hitting the kidneys. So that makes a lot of sense. Now that all goes into the tree. And like I said, it's kind of hard to break down these pieces individually, but we want to do that so folks can understand them individually and how they work collectively together. If we were to do the same thing talking about the tree, what are the bullet points that folks need to know about the mule saddle tree, and not even the mule saddle tree, the Steve Edwards saddle tree?
Well, the length of the bar. The next thing is the pressure off of the kidneys, pressure off of the scapula. Then when we actually look at the saddle, as I showed you, there's no pressure on that spine. You see, we have a lot of our mules have a spine that sticks up, and they get that from the older type donkeys, and they have 3 spines in the back. So I developed that saddle and that bar and developed the seat in such a way so that I have relief on that spine back here, okay, through here. I have relief right here, not only on my tree, but I've got spine relief on my tree, but I have, which I'm going to show you in a few minutes, bring my saddle over here, I've got spine relief on my actual skirting itself. So the main points is this, folks. You cannot see this tree on your mule. All you see is, like I showed you, the skirting.
Yeah.
That's what you see. And you cannot look at that and say, oh, yeah, it fits. Here's what a lot of people do, Dave. They'll take and get a hold of the horn and get a hold of the cantle, and they'll push it up and down. Notice I've got a little bit of rock. A little bit. Okay? When I do that on a horse tree, I got all kinds of rock on that thing. That's because of that twist for that 6th and 7th rib. So that's the main thing right there, Dave, how it sets on the back. And then the next part, it's not just the tree. It's how the skirting is built around the tree. Because I've got Belgian mules, I've got quarter horse mules, I've got Welsh pony mules, I've got Tennessee walkers, I've got all those. So they each have a different animation when they are walking. So because of that, I designed my skirting so that when I had it on a Belgian mule, this is what I got. When I had it on a gaited mule, this is what I got. And I did that in all the skirting and stuff on that saddle so that I could fit all those different ones. I would have to have a barn the size of the White House almost for all the mules that I've rode over the years and all the donkeys that I've trained on, all right, and that size in order to fit all the saddles that I would have had to have if I hadn't have come up with this cowboy saddle.
Yep. And that's where it all began. And folks, you'll hear Steve talk a lot about the cowboy saddle as you follow Queen Valley Mule Ranch, because that's where it began. You want to say something, Steve?
No, I was just my border collie come up to say
hi.
Yeah,
there we got Jess there. If you hang out with us, you'll get to meet Jess there. Jess.
Hi, Jess.
All right, there you go, Jess. Awesome. So we've talked about the scapula, we've talked about the saddle bars, we've talked about the tree. Now, Steve, let's talk about the white spots, because as I've listened to you talk, there's one side where, hey, these animals, they were not meant to have a saddle thrown up on them and us ride them. But we've domesticated them, we've trained them, so to speak, and we are going to ride them. And so there will be spots that appear, but the spots shouldn't just be a given, like, oh, we've worked them, so that's it. It's not. It's something that you want to look. Talk to me about that. Help me understand what I'm seeing when I see a prominent spot or just a little spot. Does it go away? Is it going to stay? Because I want people to understand what should concern them with their saddle and what is okay with their saddle.
Right. Okay, very good. Good point, Dave. So here's the deal. When I see salt and pepper kind of white spots here and there, that's no big deal, folks. That's a scald. That's just one of them hot, sultry days. They don't, that even with my pad, you can get a scald like that. Now, when you have a paint animal that has a lot of white, or you have a gray animal that has a lot of light color, guess what happens? Those animals will get white spots quicker than anything else. Anytime you have an animal that has a paint, a pinto type look to them, they're going to show up white spots quicker than anything else. Now, you can take a dapple gray mule, and Yolanda's not going to like this because this is what's going to happen. I just see she put a note here. You can have a dapple gray mule, and by the time it's 20 years old, Dave, it'll be solid gray. There won't be any dapple in it at all. I had a horse like that, a dapple gray horse, and she was really dappled. And then by the time she was 20 years old, she was almost white gray. So now, where do we get the white spots? Right here in the front of the bar, right here, right there. Because why? The front cinch is over tightened. We're putting pressure on that area because that cinch is over tightened. Even on my saddle, if you over tighten that front cinch, you're going to restrict that muscle area. The white hair says, hey, you over tightened my cinch. That's exactly, when you start seeing brighter white hairs, you've over tightened my cinch. The next thing is, when you see brighter white hairs, you're using a horse saddle. You're seeing that. When you see real bright white with a little brown around it, that means you've way over tightened the front cinch, and the front part of that bar is poking into the scapula. So when it comes to white spots, the majority of the time, folks, it's because, and you'll see it on horses. Just look at horses. You'll see white spots on every one of them in the front. People blame it on the saddle. It's not the saddle all the time, folks. You know what it is? It's because the back cinch is not snug on a horse. On a mule, you want to tighten it right down. I mean, when I'm going up and down heavy, steep mountains, I cinch that thing up tight. I do. The rear cinch is what keeps the saddle in place. With that rear cinch being correct, you're going to have a lot less white hairs and a lot less pressure upon that scapula and restricting the area in behind the scapula. So white hairs usually says, I made a mistake. Now, here's what I do, folks. When I take and get off to take a break, I loosen my cinches. I loosen my breeching and I bring it up. And then I break the saddle, my back of my saddle, and I make the back of my pad, and I bring it up and down, and I shake it up and down. And I let cool air go through there. In other words, while I'm taking a break, my mule takes a break. I loosen the cinches up. I lift up the back of the saddle and the pad, and I let air in. What most people do, hey, Fluffy, go get a bite of grass. No bites of grass. Once you put a halter on that animal, No more bites of grass. I have not seen a thin enough mule out there yet to say he needs a bite of grass. The majority of the mules, folks, are overfed, a horse's body on a donkey foot. So that's what I do to try to eliminate some white hairs. The other thing I did was I developed a pad. That pad is perforated neoprene. It creates the sweat. I want sweat. Two things for sweat. One, to keep it cool. The other one, to lubricate. If you have wool pads, that saddle is going to be sucking moisture off. Read the advertisements that they have. They simply say it whisks away the moisture. Why do you want to take away what God gives to these animals to keep them cool and to keep us from scalding their back? When you see white hairs, Dave, it's my fault, it's your fault, it's their fault, because we overheated our mule. One of the ways to tell, look for a little sweat around the bottom of the ears. That's one way to tell. If he's starting to sweat around them ears, he's starting to get overheated. All right. And give him a break. Take a break every couple hours. Lift up the back of the saddle and shake it up and down. And you'll help eliminate a lot of those white hairs.
That's great. I love hearing that. I know that that's going to be very helpful for a lot of folks who are watching. And I want to let you all know, folks, I'm seeing your questions coming through, and I am marking those for the end. So if you do have questions, put them in there, and I will mark them for the end. And as we get towards finishing up, we will get you your answers before we're all done. Now, one of the things that I have learned about the mule and about the donkey saddle, Steve Edwards saddle, is that it's a combination of getting all of the pieces to work together. You're only as strong as your weakest link, so to speak. And so a lot of time folks will go one of two ways. They'll go, I have your saddle, but I already have a breast collar. I already have a crooper. I'm already riding with the cinch. I'm good. Or it'll go the other way. It'll say, I have a saddle already. I've got a horse saddle. I've got a saddle that somebody told me was a mule saddle, but I'm going to buy your breast collar. I'm going to buy your britchin, and I'm going to buy your cinches, and I'm going to work it all together. And we always know that there's a reality of just, what you can buy and when, but we want people to understand that they all work together. So I'm going to ask you, Steve, talk to me a little bit about the essential tack that folks need to be considering in order to make sure that if they invest in that saddle, they get the benefit of how that saddle was designed. And likewise, if they're willing to make an investment in replacing their crooper with a britchin, that they get the full benefit of what that britchin is supposed to do. Talk to me about essential tack.
Well, I think the most essential tack is the rear cinch. I want you to notice on all my saddles, let me pull this thing over here out of the way. And bring my saddle up here. Now, you notice I have nylon latigos, 4 of them all the way around. The reason for that, and notice they're not just a strap, just one billet, just one strap. They are full length adjusting straps, all 4 all the way around. That's because I want my cinch to be even on each side. I can't tell you the number of people who send me pictures and their cinches clear up to one side or another and say they can't keep their saddle into place. Well, look, if that saddle is centered, you're going to keep if your cinch is centered, it's going to keep your saddle centered. But if it's one way or the other, that saddle is going to twist and roll that way. So the rear cinch is the most important essential part of this mule saddle, period, of the way I designed this saddle. The next part is this saddle pad. The saddle pad is one of my secrets for keeping the saddle into place. If you look at wool pads, and Dave, we got some video of me messing with pads and this sort of thing.
We do.
And you can see a guy on one of my videos, Toby Cook, where that saddle stays right into place, and the man is 340 pounds. Mm-hmm. He's a big boy. Mm-hmm. And he literally can climb in that saddle and stay in place, all right? So the saddle pad, that's one thing about the saddle pad. If you notice, you try to pull my saddle off, push it off, you can't do it. It'll stay into place, That's because of the Delcron that it's made out of. So that's the second most essential part. And then it comes down into the breeching. I've got straps in the back here where the breeching will attach. And we want to put one strap up underneath the D-ring. And that breeching is the third most essential part. Then it comes to the breast collar in the front. Anytime you use a pulling collar, folks, a pulling collar is going to be tied on hard and fast. It's going to pull the saddle forward. The way I develop my breast collar, and we've got a lot of videos out showing it, is it gives with the mule scapula as he moves down the trail, and it doesn't pull the saddle forward. Now, when do I want it to pull the saddle forward? When I'm going up a hill, I want it to keep the saddle into place. But when I'm just going little rolly hills or riding flat ground, I don't want my breast collar pulling my saddle forward, okay? Now, the last part is the front cinch. I want you to notice that when you cinch up your mule and your donkey, that front cinch is at an angle. It's at an angle. It's pulling the saddle forward. So I hobble my two cinches together. I have my front cinch the loosest, and that keeps my saddle into place. Those components right there.
That's good. Very good. And folks, one of the things that we all should, that we have access to Steve's website, muleranch.com. And there is an article on there talking about essential tack. So you can go on there, you can learn a whole lot more. There are videos of the breeching and fitting. There are videos for measuring cinches. There are videos demonstrating the fluid motion of Steve's breast collar versus a pulling collar that's fixed position on the animal. So you can go there. But it was important that we throw that in there for now, so that you understand all of the pieces work together to get that best fit that you're looking for. So I'm going to turn my camera. I'm going to continue on. Bring up my screen. Steve, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but one thing that we will hear folks say is, thanks, Steve, but no thanks. I'm going to get me a custom saddle made. And you have been down this path, and you have had clients who have gone down this path. And there may be a myriad of reasons why folks would want to get a custom saddle made, but they're expensive and they are laborious. And we want to inform folks on what your experience has been so they can make a decision on whether or not they really want to go down that. Give me a word on custom saddles.
You know, 30 years ago, I used to have my saddles all custom made. They would cost me $2,500 30 years ago, folks. They would cost me $2,500, and I'd wait almost a year for them because that saddle maker could only make so many saddles at a time. Craftsmen make a beautiful saddle, cut each panel just right, okay? My saddle makers have clickers. We push one button, we cut out every single piece. My saddle makers then can go in and hand build it and put it all together. Okay, the biggest thing between a, quote, custom saddle and my saddles is that one guy can only build one saddle at a time. That tree, you'll see him put several different trees on. Now, he put several different trees on in January when that his mule is sitting around in fat, or he measures him when he's sitting around fat. And then we do it again in July after he's sitting around. We're going to have two different measurements. We're going to have different trees. That's why I went by bone structure, not saddle structure, not muscle mass. So the custom made saddle is still the same trees, folks. He's still going to be taking the same tree, but he has to hand cut every single piece. It's not really, quote, custom. But here's the thing. When you get one of my saddles, one of the things you'll notice is there's not a lot of oil on it. And that's intentional, because what we want to do, I want the saddle to fit you. So what do? You take a spray bottle with soap in it, with dish soap, and you spray the under half. You'll see it on my videos I send to you. You spray the underside of the jockey and underneath the fenders, and you ride. When you want to shape a saddle or leather, you have to wet it. Now comes Steve Edwards custom saddles. When you ride that saddle wet, you now will customize it to fit you. That saddle maker can't have you in there and fit you up. He can't do it. But you yourself, when you wet underneath your fenders and you wet underneath your jockeys and you ride, pretty soon, guess what, folks? That saddle's going to fit you. That's what's going to happen. Because anytime you wet leather, you wet it, that's how you shape it to fit the pattern.
Awesome. Very good. So, folks, that brings us to something that I told Steve. I said, Steve, we have to include this in there. I know you want to talk a lot about the saddles, but we have to include because I answer a lot of questions that come through. And I said, we have to talk about the most frequently asked questions because this is what folks are going to want to know. And so Steve gave me permission. He said, okay, that's good. So can I use my horse saddle on my mule or my donkey? Steve, can I use my horse saddle or on my mule or donkey?
Not and have them be comfortable, not and create problems. I told you about the different links. I told you about the twist on it. Sure, here, yeah, you can ride them for a while, but pretty soon, folks, they're going to start paying the price. That mule and donkey is stoic. They brace into pressure. Now, some of these mules that have a lot of horse in them, they'll go to bucking and throwing their head. They'll blow up because they don't want to put up with the pain. Some are really nice old gentle mules, they'll brace into it and they pay the price. And I know that because I can see the way they walk. I can see the way they stride. I can see the way they go up the mountain. So can you use a horse saddle on it? Yeah, for a while. Will the mule pay the price? Yes. Here's the deal. I've got folks that went and bought mules at an auction. People are riding horse saddles, and you see the saddles up on the scapula. Now, the people buy them mules. They buy them. But what about 3 years later when the scapula starts breaking down because the scapula was banging on that horse saddle? 3 years later, you, the buyer, has now paid the price for what that trainer done or what that guy did or that lady did who rode the mule and sold him to you as a saddle mule. Yes, he did. But he himself is not going to pay the price that you're going to be paying 3, 5, 10 years down the road when that mule is starting to cripple, starting to trip.
Yep, very good. And then the next question that I have is, and this is one that we've already gotten inside of the event here. Will your saddle fit my mule? Will your saddle fit my horse? And then is it true? It can't be true that your saddle can fit every mule and every donkey. Talk a little bit about that.
You bet. All right, I showed you the different trees, the horse tree and Steve Edwards tree. When we look at saddles, we go into a saddle shop. Doesn't make any difference what manufacturer, it's still quarter horse is the basis. So no matter what saddle you buy, I have people tell me they've fit 7, 8, 9, 10 different saddles. Guess what, folks? All you did was put a semi-quarter horse saddle on that mule because that's basically what's done out there. Now, some people claim they have gated trees and this sort of thing, but that's a whole nother can of worms. So you go into a store, semi-quarter horse, every saddle that you see out there, every one of them, okay? So why is it so hard to figure out that Steve has developed a saddle and a tree to fit all mules? I'm the only one. I got all kinds of people who says they got mule saddles, but when it comes down to the tree, this tree is only my tree. I've taken, and I've got clients all over that has come to my clinics and said, but Steve, I've got a mule saddle. Oh yeah? Put your hand up underneath the front and then climb in the saddle or turn the mule's head and feel the pressure on the scapula. That'll tell you if it's correct or not. And the majority of them, folks, are not. There's not another bar like mine, not another tree out there. And then it's not just, folks, the tree itself. It's how the saddle is designed. Rounded skirting right here so it doesn't inhibit the hip. Rounded skirting right here so it doesn't inhibit the shoulder. That's why I don't have square-skirted saddles. That's why I don't sell square-skirted saddles and square-skirted pads. Now, here's the key thing. Most important part, where this D-ring is. Notice the front D-ring, rear D-ring. See how close they are apart? I mean, I can just about take my 2 fingers there. This D-ring needs to be up so that it hits the sweet spot of that mule's belly. When that mule's belly comes down and starts to go over straight, right there is where I want my cinch to fit. If that cinch is right there, that saddle is going to stay in place. Then my front cinch is hobble strapped over with about 6 inches. So that's one of the main things right there, Dave, is how the rigging plates are placed right here and here. And then also look at my fenders. Notice my fenders. I can go way up. If I'm going down a steep hill, I can go way down a steep hill and put my legs out in front. Or if I'm just riding arena, I can be straight up and down. The last part that I do, and I talked to you about this, about spines and this sort of thing.
Yep. I remember this.
All right. Now, Dave and I went and seen some cowboys who had some pretty nice mules. Notice how the back of my saddle is open. It's not stitched across. One of the saddles that we went and looked at, they had my saddle. He says that, Steve, it's soaring my mule's spine. It had those 3 little bumps sticking up in the back. And the saddle was rubbing on those 3 spots. Guess what? Somebody had sewed this together. They took all the nails out and stuff. They brought the skirting together and they sewed it together. And guess what it was doing? Rubbing the mule's spine. This is open for a reason, folks, because a lot of your mules have 3 bumps sticking up that spine. It is natural. It comes from the daddy of the donkey. So that's the reason the back of my saddle comes up. If you had it flush against the animal, guess what? You're going to be rubbing hair off of it. And especially if you've got a mule with a downhill hip, you're going to rub it even more.
Yep. I was trying to find a picture of that saddle, and I realized I only have a video of it, so I need to grab a screen still from it. So really quick, another question that we'll get about saddle fit is let me back up there. We get that question, and here is what I wanted to share with you guys about this question in particular. We have Eileen, who says, I have a 15-inch trail light saddle with a 13.3 John. Eileen is thrilled with the way that this saddle brings comfort to her and her animal. Rip says, I have a 17 hands with a 17-inch trail rider saddle. Jana says, I have 14.2 mules trail light saddle. Harold says, I have a 13.2 trail light, a 13.2. I ride a trail light saddle, best investment for the mule and for me, excellent quality saddle. Trey says, I have the cowboy saddle for 2 of my mules, different sizes, 13.2 and 14. Wanted to get it right from the start. Very informative website on gear, especially for us Aussies, good eye, who live miles away, jealous of the U.S. residents who it would be so easy to order. Jana says, I have this is the same one. I accidentally grabbed the same one twice, but we'll read it again because we love Jana. 14.2 mule trail light saddle. And then Yolanda, very wonderful comment, very gracious comment that she put in the chat. She says, it took me 3 years to save up for full tack from Steve, and I had doubts, but honestly, it's the best deal I did for my mule. Okay, I added some things to it, a gel seat saver on top of a merino wool seat saver, and now it rides great. I have the cowboy saddle, but it's a hard seat, not for a woman. Love the full tack, Steve. So there you go, folks. If you've listened to Steve and you're thinking, yeah, well, there you go. There's 5-6 people there with animals of different sizes, different pedigrees, different places in the world, and they all have the same report. And so that's why I said at the very beginning, we don't want you to take our word for it. We don't want you to just sit back and listen to Steve. We want to let you know, hey, here's what other people have said, and we'll give you all the information. Now, the last one, and Steve had me add this. Steve, I think this makes a lot of sense when you talk about the 19.5-inch bars, but folks will say, Steve, I'm riding I need a 17-inch saddle seat, but that is going to be too big for my mule or donkey. Is it too big for their mule or donkey, Steve?
No, because my bar is only 19.5 inches long. And so with it being 19.5 inches long, you heard these people say, I've got a 13.2 mule. I've got a 14-hand mule. You know, those are short back little mules. And the saddle fits them. It doesn't rub the spine and it doesn't rub the scapula. Why is that? Because I got a 19.5-inch bar. not a 24-inch bar like you see on the majority of semi-quarter horse and full quarter horse saddles.
Yep, that's great. So here's the deal, folks. What I wanted to do, I'll bring my, I'll stop the screen here and I'll bring this back. Steve and I are talking. We just released. Do you have it right there, Steve? Is that the Heritage, or is that?
Yeah, this is the Cowboy Heritage right here.
That's the Cowboy Heritage right there. Turn it, so they let the people see it, Steve. The people want to see the Heritage. There you go. There's the Heritage right there. Now this was over a year in the making, designing this new saddle, and we have taken the history and we have taken the dependability and the reliability of the, merged that with a fiberglass coating. So at the very beginning, you saw Steve talking about the rawhide outer covering and how it had never been used, yet it still was ripping apart. And that's one of the reasons why we didn't want to use a rawhide, is because it breaks apart, it breaks down. What we did is we took the history, we took the heritage, and we took the dependability of wood, but we merged it with the technology and the durability and the long-lasting life that comes with fiberglass. And that is what the Heritage saddle is built on. That's what the Extreme Ultralight is built on. Now, here's the deal. We are having trouble keeping these saddles on the shelves. We get a batch in and they go right out. And then on top of that, COVID has completely messed up our entire shipping cycles, our ordering and our fulfillment and everything. And I'm sure that you've experienced that in your neck of the woods. So here we've been planning this and it just hasn't come in. And so we were thinking, what could we do to let folks know that we believe they need to be into a Steve Edwards saddle? We believe that's the best thing for them. We believe that's going to be the best thing for their animal. But we don't have all of the sizes right now. And when we do have them, they come in and they go out right away. Here's what Steve and I talked about. Steve, Susan, and I talked about, and here's what we want to do. We are going to give you a code. And if you order a Steve Edwards saddle with this code between now and when we send out our email saying the saddles have come in, what we are going to do is we are going to give you the complete collection of Steve Edwards videos. Now, folks have been ordering these saddles and they've gotten them immediately. And we wanted to do something for those who might want to order a saddle, but are thinking, gosh, I don't want to order it and all of a sudden, have to wait. Yes, there will be a little bit of a wait time. And yes, we are working really hard with our suppliers to get them in. But what we're going to do for you is we are going to give you access immediately to all of Steve's videos contained in the complete instructional video collection. And what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to put a link on the screen where you can click. And if you go and if you use the code, it's let's see, OCT bonus, October bonus, OCT bonus, and you order a saddle, as long as the collection of videos is in your cart, it will discount the full price of those videos for you. So you'll buy your saddle and you'll get the videos absolutely free. And that's something that we want to do for you. We were originally just going to do it for today and tomorrow, but because we're having a hard time nailing down our suppliers, what we're going to do is we're going to make that available today, tomorrow, and as soon as our next batch of saddles comes in, we may have it right now, we may not, but as soon as our next batch of saddles comes in, we're going to give you 48 hours to make your order then. So you've got some time, but at the same time, if you want those videos right now, you can go check it out. Now, I want to get to, so I'm going to leave that button up there. Y'all can go check it out right now. And like I said, if you order today, use OCT bonus, October bonus, make sure the videos are in your cart and make sure the saddle's in your cart. It will discount the full price of those videos. Now we're going to go to questions that have been asked, and we're going to ask Steve about those. Steve, do you know anyone that makes a gorgeous silver encrusted parade tack for donkeys and mules? Someone's looking to outfit here. What do you have? Any comments on some of these silver encrusted parade tack for donkeys and mules?
If somebody wants to have a custom made saddle, whether it be for parade with a bunch of silver and a bunch of stuff like this, we can do it. I got saddle makers that have been making saddles since 1950s. And they're good guys. They know what they're doing. My one main saddle maker, Joey, he kicks out these saddles left and right as quick as he can. And then we got a couple other saddle makers that are in the same family, Charles as well, and they make the saddles for me. But if you want a custom-made saddle with silver on it, we can produce it for you.
There you go. All right. Next question. This one comes from Michelle. Says, have you ever looked into the Peruvian horse saddles or the Paso Fino horse saddles when designing your saddle? Variegated horses that seems to have the same scapula problems.
They've got some similar scapula problems. Uncle Bud Brown was the first one to bring the Paso Fino into the United States. And when it comes to Paso Fino mules, I've rode a lot of them, and I've rode them in my saddle. Now, my saddle is designed a little bit different than what your Pasos and your Peruvians ride, but it's still got my tree. You've got to have the rigging plate in a different place and this sort of thing. So, I can have a custom-made saddle made for you, but folks, that means I got to change the dynamics of the tree. And so here's the deal: when I have trees made, we do 100 or 200 trees at a time. So my tree maker can get right in, put them on the forms, make them. But if we got to make just one tree, it's time consuming. And we've got to find a spot somewhere in there to make the one tree. And the same thing with my saddle maker. When he's got to go in and make a saddle a certain way, folks, it takes time. I did what Henry Ford had done. He took those Model A's and he painted them black and he sold them. I've taken this cowboy saddle that's proven, and I've designed it, I've made it work, and it works perfect. But I have not had other saddle designs that I have worked with that I've been happy with, other than what I've started off with the cowboy.
There you go. Real quick, I just want to emphasize that I see folks are clicking to go explore the collection and the deal. I just want to emphasize, we do not have all of our we've got a lot of saddles in, but if you have concerns over whether or not yours is in, you can give Steve a call and he can tell you if he's got that saddle size in. But if you order using OCT bonus, you'll get the complete collection immediately, and that's delivered digitally. So you don't have to fiddle with DVDs. You don't have to worry about shipping and handling. You don't got to wait in the mail. You can get those. And the reason why we're doing that is because we are waiting, just like so many other folks, for our next batch of saddles to come in. They are in shipment right now, and we are trying to nail down our carrier to make sure that they get in as soon as possible. But our way of saying, hey, we want to take care of you, we want you to get results right now, is saying, if you order, you're going to get the complete collection for free. So I just want to emphasize that. Steve was very clear with me. We want folks to know what we're inviting them to do. And so I want to just emphasize and make sure that that's clear. Megan has the question. She says, do mini or pony-sized mules have different sized saddle bars? Or do the 19.5-inch saddle bar fit comfortably on a small pony-sized mule? I'm trying to find and learn about saddles for a pony-sized mule.
All right, now pony size can cover a lot of different sized animals, guys. So I need to know how tall the mule is and how much it weighs. And then that'll give me an idea on it. Now, remember, I've got 19.5 inches. So measure from your scapula to your hip bone, how much room do you have there? Now, if you're going to try to ride a pony mule, that's going to be awful tough on that mule. If you're going to try to put your kids on it, just don't bother with buying a saddle. Get yourself one of those bareback pads, put your kid on it, put a handle on it, and away you go. Because here's the downside, folks, and it's going to be tough to say, but a kid being dragged behind a pony, it's ugly. And so you don't want them kids, you don't want their feet in the stirrups. You want their legs to hang natural. Let them feel the horse, let them feel the pony. They don't need their feet in the stirrups.
There you go. Awesome. Thank you, Megan. Appreciate that. Next question. This one is from June, talking a little bit about cinches. What do you consider over-tightened? I keep experiencing a slipping saddle even after tightening the front and the rear cinch.
Okay. Now, you're experiencing the saddle once you get in it or as you're trying to get into it. Here's what a lot of folks do, Dave. They get a hold of the back of the cantle, they get a hold of the horn, and they try to pull themselves up. When you get in the saddle, get a hold of the horn, get a hold of the mane,
pull yourself up. Watch the old cowboy movies. Watch the old John Wayne movies and Gary Cooper and some of them. You'll see every one of them guys have been taught right how to get in the saddle, get a hold of the horn, get a hold of the mane, and climb up in that saddle. And yes, keep manes on your mules, okay?
Awesome. The next question, this one comes from Dwayne. We talked a little bit about this, but we want to answer his question specifically. How do I determine which saddle size to choose? Now, Steve, you've got 15, 16, 17-inch saddle seat sizes. How do I know which one to choose?
Okay, so when I get in the saddle, I want to see two fingers between with my feet hanging. The feet are not in the stirrups. With my feet hanging, I want to see an average of 2 fingers between the pommel and my thigh. All right, that's what I want to see on average. It's not our rump size, it's our thigh size. How much room do I have here in the jockey area?
All right, very good. And just as an FYI, if you send a text message to Steve, 602-999-6853 with your gender, your height, and your weight, Steve can make a recommendation for you. He's been doing it for years, and folks, they get the right size saddle seat. He's just got it worked out that way. Debbie has a question. She says, I don't have a mule. I have 2 large donkeys and an older halflinger mix. The halflinger has never been comfortable in anything but a bareback pad. A very short sway back, minimal wither, and a high hip is impossible to fit. Do you have anything that could fit him? I have a mule saddle with double rigging, but the bars are too long, bridging his back, causing him to buck. Yeah, that sounds familiar. Steve, what would you say to Debbie?
That's not a mule saddle. It may be a mule saddle, but darn sure it ain't a Steve Edwards thing. Now, here's the thing. Folks, when you are wanting a trail animal, you have to have an animal that's built for the trail, balanced and framed up, head down, neck down, nose on the vertical, straight across that way. Your halflinger is basically a miniature draft animal. And because it's a miniature draft animal, trying to fit a saddle to that back, the way it is, the way it's built up muscle-wise, and the higher hip is very, very difficult. With a halflinger, I have suggested for people to put it up just like very similar to a mule. Put a breeching on, tighten up the rear cinch, snug on the front cinch, and that has helped. And then the next thing is my saddle pad. When you use a wool saddle pad, folks, you'll see I've got videos on it. That wool saddle pad, that saddle moves around. The saddle doesn't move around when it's on this pad. You can pull on the fender and it doesn't bring the saddle over. It's the way it's Duracron it's made. So, you know, with the halflinger folks, they are not physically built to be a trail animal.
All right. That's that question. Next question. This is June. June says, will a Steve Edwards mule saddle fit both a quarter horse mule and a Belgian draft mule?
Absolutely. We got Dave with us from a place called Australia. He's got a 17-hand Belgian mule, and his wife's got a 14-2 quarter type mule. They use the same saddle on all those mules.
Awesome. That's what folks want to know. Let's see. Next question here. Does Steve take into consideration the fit of the female rider into his mule saddles?
Yes. Okay. So now, folks, we got the females. What I've learned from them, and I've just been married to one for 52 years now, is that the little pin bones in your hind end, they tend to hit certain spots. So my padded seat is designed for the females. Now, you heard little Yolanda say she's got one of my cowboy saddles. And I tried to explain to her that she's going to have a little bit of problems. So what Yolanda did, she wanted the depth of the cowboy saddle. So she got some different types of paddings and put them on to fit her back inside, you know. And so, yes, with these fenders being able to move,
you'll be able to put a male or a female and move the saddles really easy.
Awesome. Very good. Let's see here. I'm trying
I
to
also mentioned, Dave, probably 80% of my clients are women.
Yep. That's absolutely true. I think, here we go. This is from Neil. Neil says, I have a trail light saddle. My mule loves it. Can I change the fenders for leather fenders? Now, why is he asking if he can change the fenders for leather fenders on the trail light?
I don't know, because that's one of the featured things about that trail light is those fenders really move. They don't pull on the back and stuff. They're not stiff.
Okay.
But maybe he wants something a little bit more leathery. I'll tell you what I would do. Go ahead and sell that trail light and buy yourself an ultralight, an extreme ultralight. It's only 20 pounds. It's all leather. It's got the newest designs and stuff like that. It's a beautiful saddle. And we just imported a bunch of leather in from Argentina, and it's pre-dyed and it's very soft and extremely comfortable.
Yep. There we go. Trying to see. Can you please repeat Steve's number? Yolanda, thank you. It's 602-999-6853. Now, when you call, you're going to, especially if you try to call right now, you're going to get Steve's voicemail. He's hanging out with me. He's hanging out with us. But you will actually get his voicemail the majority of the time because, hey, it's a working ranch. There's a lot to do. But Steve makes designated times throughout the day to call folks back and to make sure that you get the answers that you need. And that's one of the comments that we get over and over again is folks appreciate the time that Steve spends with them on the phone. And I can speak for Steve because I know him very well. He will be thrilled to be able to spend time on the phone with you, helping you make the right decision for you, for your animal, for your family, for your tack house, etc. Michelle asked the question, is the bonus on all your saddles? Yes, any Steve Edwards saddle will qualify for this. All you have to do is add the videos to your shopping cart. So you click the button that you go to, it'll take you to the video page where you can see all that's included. You click add to those shopping carts and then add any saddle to your shopping cart. Use the OCT bonus coupon code. You'll see where there's a place to put it in, and that will give you a discount. I think that's all of the questions that we got, Steve. I'm going to give it a second here. Is there anything that, we covered a lot of ground, but is there anything that maybe we didn't discuss or didn't talk about as in depth as you're thinking maybe we should mention now?
No, Dave, I think we pretty much covered it. We've got that free video series where it's a saddle fit video series. It's over 10 hours there. It's free. You see me fitting 17 hand Percheron mules to 13 tube mules. You see that tree going from animal to animal to animal, no problem at all. We were talking before about phone calls calling me. Dave, by 1 o'clock today, I made 32 phone calls.
Yeah.
Okay. That's not counting text messages and emails. This morning, when I opened up my email, I had 98 emails. Now, I do got to tell you, about 25 of them was from our president, but that's another story. But folks, I do want to get to you, but understand that when you call, I may have somebody else I'm talking to, and I probably got Yolanda over in the Netherlands or somebody else over in France or somebody here in the United States that I'm talking to, or I've got them somewhere in the phone range. I actually averaged, Dave, here this last month, I averaged 63 phone calls a day. Isn't that fun to be able to help that many people?
It's amazing. And who would have thought this internet thing would allow folks from all over the country, all over the world, allow us to share and grow this community. Folks are letting me know that I missed a question. And Linda, I'm so sorry. Linda was asking if you offer a complete package, saddle, breech, breast collar, saddle pad, stirrups, both, etc. So what I'll tell you, Linda, is the most we have done in the past on that is we will offer free shipping once, maybe twice a year. And that will be essentially, depending on where you're at in the country, that might be a 10% discount. That might be a 5% discount. So that's the most we've ever done. I'm not saying it won't ever happen in the future, but that's the most we've ever done in the past. I will tell you that this offer that we're running right now is the biggest value that we've ever offered. So if you were to buy all of Steve's videos separately, that's over $700. If you were to buy just the collection that we put together, this collection's brand new. We added it in May. Or April, if you were to buy just that, it would be $600. We've never offered $600 off of anything ever. So this is the biggest value that we've ever provided off the store. And like I said, the reason why we wanted to do that, we had this plan for a while. We wanted to be able to really promote the saddles and say, we got everything in stock. We have a lot in stock. And so if you're concerned about availability, just call Steve. He'll let you know. But I said, well, what we can do is we can deliver this right now. If they decide I want a Steve Edwards saddle, I've been putting it off. I've been thinking, hey, I need to do this, but we wanted to give you a reason to go ahead and do it right now and tell you thank you and that we are grateful that you are a part of this community. And so that's why we're doing this. So it's the biggest value that we offered. Let's see here. I got mine. Linda says, I got mine. I'm cool, ready to tack up and ride. Yolanda says, I ordered my saddle too soon. I should have waited. Well, you might be waiting a little bit longer because we are hoping all those we can't keep them on the shelves. They're just coming in and they're going right back out. So, Steve, that's all the questions that we got, folks. I want to say thank you so much. Really appreciate it. We don't take this for granted. You just gave us an hour and 20 minutes of your time on a Thursday night. I know that there's a whole lot of things you could be doing. So I know I speak for Steve when I say that we're very appreciative that you trusted us with this time. And regardless of what steps you take going forward, I know that we all hope that you got something out of this, that you feel you can go out and you can get results with your animal. You understand your animal a little bit more. And you can communicate with them a little bit more. Steve, what would you like to say to folks before we say goodbye for tonight?
Well, basically, I appreciate y'all. Right now, we are running into problems with this COVID-19 thing. I was supposed to have had saddles and breechings and breast collars 2 weeks ago, and we didn't get them in. Today, I was supposed to have had in my orders today. It's supposed to come in. UPS contacted me and said, we can't get it out to you. They just don't have the manpower. People are calling in sick. They're saying they've got COVID, and then that messes up things. So anyway, long story short, right now I've got a lot of saddles, but the biggest thing I'm missing out on right now is 16-inch saddles and breeching. So hopefully they'll be coming in. So we'll be looking forward to visiting with you in the future. I'd like to tell you folks that, yeah, you buy a bundle and I'll give you a discount. I am too small to do that. That's number one thing. Second part is, I don't have any competition when it comes down to my saddles and stuff. So I don't have other companies I've got to compete against to give you a better price. My saddles are only my saddles. My breechings, breast collars, everything is only my stuff. You can't buy it in any stores. So that's why I can tell you that I cannot give you the opportunity to get a better price because I'm too small to do it. So I'd love to say I can do it, but I can't do it, folks.
Yep. We talk about it all the time, and we are always slow to ever raise prices. When we do it, it's because we have to do it. And you know what, Steve? One of the greatest things doing the live stream that we've done over the last, year and a half, 2 years, doing that live stream, what I have discovered, and I know you feel this too, is we have just an incredible group of people around us. And I know you don't take their trust and that community for granted. Matter of fact, Steve messages me all the time just saying, hey, check out this person. Isn't this awesome? Look at what they've got. Isn't that great? And just all of the folks we've been able to meet from around the world, whether it's online or in person, just we know that we've earned so many of y'all's trust, and we do not take that for granted. And for those of you who are new, we work hard every day to gain your trust as well, because it's important to us that when you go out and you work with these animals, that you have confidence and knowing that we're going to put you in the best position to succeed. I mean, that really is something that means a lot. So, well, folks, thank you so much. Appreciate it. And y'all have a fantastic evening. If there are any questions that we didn't get to, or if the question comes to you, even heck right now, and we don't get to it, send a message either to me at support@muleranch.com or send a text message to Steve 602 999-6853. Matter of fact, you can find it on the website, muleranch.com. Send them a question. We want to get you your answer. Thank you so much for spending a little bit of time. Steve, how about we see folks next week? Well, you're going to be traveling. We're going to see folks soon, and we'll see what we can do about next week. But we're going to go up to Prescott this weekend, and we're going to film some good stuff to share with y'all. How about that, Steve? Does that sound good?
It's going to be awesome. We're going to have a good time with the boys, and they're going to get to ride some donkeys. And folks, you're going to get a chance to meet a man who has served in this United States in the service, and he's a donkey and mule guy that's really trying hard. And you can see, folks, he's hurting right now. He's hurting because, unfortunately, he's heard different things about these mules and donkeys. So you're going to hear what he has to say, and you're going to see some really unique things on some new videos we got coming out.
Great, folks. Thank you. Appreciate it. Appreciate you. And look forward to seeing you next time. Have a great evening. And if you missed anything, just check your email. We're going to send an email out here in the next hour, and you can go back. You can watch any of the parts. So God bless. Take care, Steve. We'll see you soon.
You betcha, Dave. I'm reading some of the things over here, and there's some Bible scriptures and this sort of thing, and even some amen. So
how about
hang in there, brothers and sisters. We'll see you.
Awesome. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
You betcha. Bye-bye. That was fun.